Welcome back to another episode of These Crazy Fools That Just Keep Eating Meat and Can't Stop Talking About It. Today, it's Tom and Justin recording another Short Ribs. And what is today's topic, Justin?
Hunter-gatherers. How much hunter are we versus how much gathery are we? And what does that really mean?
Yeah, I think this whole hunter-gatherer concept kind of skews things in people's minds. I think it's not apparent that most of this was hunting and less of it was gathering, right? I mean, most of the things you can gather are seasonal anyways, right? So if you're going to pick some berries, whatever, you can do that for whatever, a month or whatever out of a year. And then I think people have this idea that like, oh, people just, rooted around and ate starchy tubers and, potatoes and cassava or whatever. But
The healing potato, remember from Medical Medium?
there you go.
Healing the potato. Yeah.
Well, you know what I like to say about potatoes? Every single variety of wild potato is toxic to human beings. So we literally could not eat potatoes until we figured out how to detoxify them. And potatoes are a new world food. So the only people who ate them were in the Americas until after Columbus. So they didn't get to Europe and Asia and Africa till after that. So we didn't really evolve eating potatoes. And yes, there are many indigenous peoples in the Americas that still eat potatoes that are of the toxic variety, and they know how to detoxify them to eat them. They do stuff like eating them with clay. Now, if I was a prehistoric guy and I ate some potato and it made me sick, I would never dream of saying, hey, maybe I just need to smear some clay on this potato so I can eat it. Doesn't sound particularly appetizing to begin with. But, this is, we started evolving long before we discovered fire. So a lot of the foods out there that we take for granted have been bred to be less toxic, to be sweeter, to have more fruit and less seed or more husk or whatever. And all that stuff, just the stuff that was available naturally was not particularly nourishing. It wasn't particularly tasty. And it was more or less the alternative when you could not find enough meat.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, you have to be pretty desperate to rub some clay on something and then try to eat it after that. So, I mean, whoever first did that must have been a really, really tough month or something like that, which, that happened. Yeah, when you hear hunter-gatherer, I think it automatically puts in people's heads that we were roughly half and half. You know what I mean? But for some weird reason, the vegans get away with just saying we were only gatherers and not hunters at all. And then we get looked at when we're crazy when we say the opposite, that, oh no, we were primarily hunter, like we're talking 90%, roughly, depending on where in the world. And in parts of the world, 100% hunter, right? And so the only thing you were gathering was a lobster in your lobster trap, or some other trap that you had made, rabbit trap, seal trap, whatever.
Right. And if you were walking along picking up mussels, clams, oysters, and stuff like that, would you call that hunting? No, you call that gathering, right? But clearly from the coastal habituation side, you can see that people generation after generation ate enormous amounts of shellfish and larger fish, non-shellfish.
Right. And to that fact, we go to the grocery store and the grocery store is kind of split roughly half and half between, you got the vegetables and the meat department. Hopefully your grocery store has a meat department. And then, the processed food in the middle that's made of mostly the plant food, very little of the butcher. And so, it just kind of reinforces the idea of hunter-gatherer. You get to go to a grocery store and feel like you're a gatherer, right? Because you're picking up your avocado, your tomato, your melon, whatever's going on, right? So you feel like that's natural, and that's probably what we did if you don't know any better. It is very, you can't really do it the same with hunting when you walk up to the meat counter and ask for a ribeye roast, but again, that's just the modern world. That's where we're at. And hunting, is fairly difficult. So that's why many people don't hunt, but economical and all that. Anyway, it's a whole nother discussion. And so it can be really easy for people to make the mistake of, oh, we always ate this way, or we always had access to these vegetables. And when you actually dive into it, and when you actually look at it, and the actual anthropology behind it, it's just not true. One of my favorites is that we barely were able to eat broccoli 800 years ago. And in most of the vegetables are that way. Wheat
things
goes
like
back.
things like kale were recently introduced. It was actually a crop that was intended to feed livestock, and the livestock couldn't eat it, so they decided to try and sell it to people.
Right. And even wheat itself, the master grain, right? The grain of civilization is 6,000 years, before we really started hitting that pretty hard. So, and my argument is that, well, that's just not enough time for our body to adjust. And it just seems that our body in the adjustment, it makes us really sick. And, low sperm count, kind of makes our existence more difficult. We just don't survive that way, being primarily plant-based.
When let me just point out though, when anthropologists look at the remains of our ancestors and they see bad teeth and diseased bones and bad joints and stuff like that in the remains, they automatically assume, oh, these people were cultivating grains. These were early agriculturalists. And if they see big, healthy, strong people, they go, oh, these are meat eaters. These guys were, starting with the early Indo-European movement that first domesticated horses and cattle. That's one of the things. They lorded over all the Neolithic people that were cultivating grains, which wheat and barley and oats and stuff like that are essentially just grass seeds that they bred over time, so the seeds got bigger and fleshier. So, but those people were never as healthy and as strong as the people who just ate meat, and the archaeological record points that out.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, we just did a video called Lipivores, and I feel like we need to just completely get rid of the term hunter gatherer. It's just too inaccurate. It just doesn't describe the true situation. I know it's fun to say, and it makes it seem cute and kind of egalitarian. We have this image in our mind, or rather, it's probably just been implanted of, men going out to hunt, and then women with a baby on their back gathering berries and fruits and things like that, which probably did happen. It's just that it didn't happen, enough to sustain, that was,
well, even the early researchers that went out to record what hunter gatherers were eating, they classified all the small animals, fish and stuff like that, like freshwater fish, squirrels, rabbits, marmots, all that stuff that people ate. That was actually considered, they could put that in the fauna category. I mean, the flora category. So they put that in the same category as nuts and berries and all the other stuff, because they didn't really consider it hunting. So like, you kill a squirrel or something or a snake and you eat it, it's not the same as going out and hunting a deer. And the reason why they classified it is that because they were doing a different type of research than what we would expect for a conversation like this. So a lot of that data that we see, particularly like in old textbooks and stuff, it was based on the assumption that anything that was flora was not an animal, but that's not true because they didn't count small animals.
I did not know that. So this is why we do these short ribs. There you go. So we everybody learned something. So, I mean, they either need to explain that or get rid of the term then, because it is just in the current parlance, I think it's just, excuse me, overall, inaccurate.
Yeah. So, and I mean, a lot of the world lives on, eats a lot of starchy stuff like, it's just on the tip of my tongue, cassava, and cassava has to be, uh, detoxified as well. You can't eat, raw cassava.
It's one of the most toxic plants in the
Yeah. So
world.
it took a while. I'm sure it took us a while, and I'm sure it didn't grow everywhere. It would probably grew in one region, just like wheat started in one region and eventually domesticated mankind, got human beings to spread it everywhere. And that doesn't mean it's good for us. We just enjoyed eating it. It made us feel good to eat it. And of course, it's better than starving to death. But again, we see a commonly eaten plant that is essentially toxic unless you know how to detoxify it. Because the vast majority of plants in the world are toxic. And the ones we eat now are just lesser toxic, but they're not necessarily benign. I mean, anybody who knows anything about beans or other legumes, you have to kind of detoxify them. Things like red kidney beans. You eat some raw red kidney beans, they'll put you in the hospital. We've talked about in other videos about oxalates. That's a big problem. You can easily get too much oxalate out of something like that. And you can't eat any of this stuff off the tree raw. The few exceptions are fruits, but like even like olives and stuff like that, they have to be detoxified. So the idea that human beings were just eating foraging plants most of the time and occasionally ate animals is the complete opposite of what the records show.
There we go.
There we go. All right, I think we put the nail in this coffin. So anyways, thanks everybody for watching. We hope we answered some of your questions for you in our shorter, concise format here called Short Ribs. Please share the video with people who might enjoy it or learn something from it or find it mildly entertaining perhaps. And until
My
next
coughing
time,
fits, I'm sure I'll get lots of views and thumbs up.
yeah, well, if you close the door, you wouldn't swallow so many flies. But until
I'm
next,
gathering.
he's gathering from the air, flying protein. All right. So until next time, eat some meat, feel better, and whatever you do,
Don't fall down the carb hole.